Can you beat Portal without using any portals? Okay, well technically, you can just turn on cheats and no-clip your way through all of the levels, but that's no fun. So let's set a simple limitation. You're not allowed to use any cheats. By using the command svcheats1 in the developer console, the player has access to a ton of cheat commands, like timescale, god mode, and of course, no-clip. So let's make all of these off limits. So now, can you beat Portal without using any portals? This is surprisingly a very complicated question. Back in 2007, when Portal was released, speedrunners were trying to find all sorts of glitches and gimmicks that could save time in a speedrun. And while a ton of cool tricks were found, there was one little detail players discovered that had humorous implications for the speedrun. That being the console command ch_create airboat. This console command would spawn an airboat in front of the player. The airboat is a vehicle used in Half-Life 2, seen primarily in the water hazards section of the game, where the player has to navigate through a toxic waterway. Since the dirty water hurts the player, the airboat provides a safe way to traverse the level without taking damage from the water. When making Portal, Valve just sort of copy and pasted a lot of game files from Half-Life 2. In fact, at its core, both Portal and Team Fortress 2 are basically mods of Half-Life 2. As a result of this, some Half-Life 2 assets, like the airboat, are buried deep in the Portal game files. And while this airboat nonsense should just be a fun fact, things start getting interesting when we realize that the console command ch_create airboat is not protected by SV cheats. That's right, the ability to summon an airboat at will is not a cheat command. By modern day standards, this console command is obviously not allowed in speedruns, but back around 2010, people were a bit more curious. Speedrunners discovered theoretical skips with airboats that could save a ton of time, and technically, you didn't have to turn on cheats, so surely these skips could be used in speedruns, right? A very skilled Portal speedrunner named Demonstrate would respond to these airboat shenanigans in a video titled Portal OMG Best Video Ever.
Oh my god, I just got the greatest idea! Check this bro! Check it out! Watch this, watch this. This is so good. Watch this. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Oh, I don't got cheats on. Oh, no cheats. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. See it? Create airboat! Oh, I fell through the ground. Come on. Yeah, watch this. Let me in. Yes! Yes!
While this video was made just for laughs, near the end, Demonstrate jokingly says,
"Oh my god, I should make an airboat speedrun."
Well, almost 7 years later, that's exactly what speedrunners set out to do. Airboat Percent is a Portal speedrun category that involves beating the game using only airboats. You aren't even allowed to use portals. In fact, you never even pick up the portal gun. This begs the question, how are airboats so powerful that they let you beat Portal without shooting portals? Ironically, the airboat's intended purpose, being able to navigate acid or dirty water, cannot be used in Portal, as for some reason, the player will still take damage in the airboat when driving on acid. So most of the boat's usefulness comes in two glitches, airboat clipping and airboat boosting. Airboat clipping gives us the ability to clip through walls. Since the airboat is a vehicle, entering the airboat will always put us in the driver's seat, near the front of the airboat. However, the hitbox to enter the airboat is quite large, extending all the way around the airboat. This means that if the player can enter the back of the airboat, they will always pop out at the front. With this in mind, a well-placed airboat can put the back of the airboat on one side of the wall, and the front of the airboat on the other side of the wall. By entering the back of the airboat, the player will instantly teleport to the driver's seat, and effectively clip through the wall. Using airboat clipping, we can clip through almost every obstacle in Portal. We can skip chambers by clipping through doors, we can clip through walls to land out of bounds, we can even get back in bounds by using airboats. Airboat clipping can overcome most challenges in the game, but there are some exceptions. For example, this chamber is normally solved by gaining momentum with portals. Clipping through walls won't help us out here, so we need to utilize a different airboat glitch. that being Airboat Boosting. Airboat Boosting is a powerful glitch that works by spawning multiple airboats in the same spot. When spawning an airboat, the game doesn't do any collision checks, so spawning two airboats in the same place will result in them completely overlapping. However, the game does not like it when physics objects overlap. In order to fix this, the game pushes objects that overlap, meaning that the objects will be given a fair amount of speed and will repel from each other. We can abuse this mechanic by spawning a ton of objects in the exact same spot, and the unstuck push occurs multiple times, resulting in a super fast projectile. Done properly, this essentially creates an airboat missile, which usually kills the player on impact. But if the player jumps at the right time, they can instead get propelled by the airboat. This is the Airboat Boost. Airboat boosting is absurdly powerful, as it can be used to clear almost all horizontal gaps in the game and can also boost us upwards to gain seemingly infinite height. To consistently perform airboat boosts, speedrunners bind their mouse wheel to spawn an airboat, as each tick in a mouse scroll results in one airboat spawn, so a full scroll can yield 5 to 10 airboats. And to top this all off, there is no limit to how many airboats can be spawned. If your mouse is scrolling, airboats will continue to spawn. It will only stop when the game eventually crashes because of an entity overload. Here's a quick demonstration of that with a frictionless mouse wheel and a can of compressed air. With an almost infinite amount of airboats, airboat clipping and airboat boosting is all we need to beat Portal without portals. The airboat percent speedrun is around 14 minutes long, so it's a little shorter than a glitchless speedrun. The initial chambers are much faster with the airboat exploits, but the run ends up losing a ton of time in the escape sequence near the end of the run, as these massive chambers benefit from use of the portal gun. There are a lot of awesome chambers to highlight in the speedrun, but I'll show some of my favorites. In the very first level of the game, the player can skip the vault sequence by airboat clipping out of the vault. Once in Chamber 0, they can once again clip through the door with an airboat. I also forgot to mention that if you exit an airboat while in an elevator, the game will put you on top of the elevator. For some reason, this can save 1 to 2 seconds in every chamber that has an elevator. In Chamber 1, the player can precisely place an airboat to balance on a glass seam, and then drive through the glass with the airboat. They can then clip through another door to enter the elevator and finish out the chamber. These first two chambers are an explosive start to the speedrun, and give a great look for what's to come. In Chamber 8, the player can immediately airboat boost from the start of the level and fling perfectly into the end elevator. In Chamber 11, the player can clip out of the initial section by placing an airboat in the wall, and then climbing on another airboat to get into the driver's seat. Then, the player can place an airboat in the chamber wall, where they can drive on top of the chamber in out-of-bounds space, before clipping back inbounds to enter Chamber 12. In Chamber 12, the player can do airboat boosts to get height to reach the top of the level, and then can finish the chamber with a clip through the ending door. In Chamber 15, the player normally has to use portals to solve an orb puzzle, which activates moving platforms to get through this acid corridor. However, with airboats, players can either clip through the upper wall and navigate the section out of bounds, or they can spawn a ton of airboats to clog the acid, and cross the obstacle with an airboat bridge. A great example of thinking with airboats. Chamber 17 is one of the most well-known levels in the game, as the player is introduced to the companion cube and later has to incinerate the cube to progress. But with the power of airboats, we can save the companion cube. The player can clip through the glass at the start of the chamber, and then line up a precise airboat over the ending door. This airboat will land out of bounds, but the player can then drive the airboat back inbounds to finish out the chamber. The ending of Chamber 18 is intended to test a player's reaction time with the portal gun, as they have to land portal shots on these platforms while maintaining their vertical momentum. However, with airboats, the player can perform a massive airboat boost to clear the entire chamber. Of course, there are so many cool levels and strategies in the speedrun, so I would recommend watching the world record for the Airboat percent speedrun, which is linked in the description below. Airboats shouldn't even be in Portal, but because they lacked cheat protection, they ended up becoming one of Portal's biggest inside jokes, and eventually created one of Portal's most creative speedrun categories. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.